Oh, the irony. In these very difficult times, it's ironic that a trusted source for information has actually become The Guardian. Can you believe we're on the same team for once? What used to be the home of wild, exaggerated leftism is now a credible source. Yet again, hours before Rachel from Accounts releases yet more budgeting news from a piercing insight into the world and British economy, The Guardian tells us that there's going to be further disability cuts. The 5 billion they already cut last week was allegedly a modest sum, so there's going to be even more cuts. Now, we all know the difference between genuine benefit claimants and people who exaggerate the point. That said, this isn't anything to do with the claimants, this is to do with the system. And unfortunately, when you have a government that's left-wing, that's basically encouraged this system for people to become more dependent on the state in more ways than one, with education, social services intervention, with your children and your family life, with the benefit scheme themselves, with job seekers, with things that basically are schemes that people go on to hide unemployment. When you've got a government that's encouraged this and then it's now trying to cut its own schemes, where it's been the instigator of it. As you know, there's been influential people in politics through the years. Some say Margaret Thatcher, some say Winston Churchill, but one of the most influential, and remember, when I say influential, I'm not saying it's a compliment, one of the most influential characters in British politics has been Tony Blair. Tony Blair devised a system that's very hard to undo. You need determination, effort and expertise to undo what he's set in place for this country. Hence our rapid immigration, because we can't get out of it because of legal ties in. But you can get out of anything if you've got a will to do it. As someone once said to me, they're only pieces of paper. What are you going to do? Outrage. How are you going to tackle outrage? Well, tackle it the way you tackle anything else. See them in court. The thing is, this clearly is a government that isn't even looking after its own voter base. It's not looking after those who are dependent on benefits, and it's not looking after those who thought they'd get a bit better deal from benefits. I mean, this is really the thin end of the wedge. They've attacked the pensioners with the winter fuel allowance. How anyone can even do that and spend the amount of money they've been spending overseas is beyond me. Because people are deemed with £6,000 in the bank, that they're well off. This family is currently paying £1,500 a week for my father-in-law to sit in a nursing home that is not opulent, believe me. It's modest. The staff are very good, very caring. There's no complaint. £1,500 a week. And when you think, because he was inevitably on one-to-one care for a period in time, it's dementia and he had these erratic outbursts, that was costing the government £4,000 a week. How many people are in that position throughout the country? The area that needs regulating is definitely care homes, but I'm going to cover that in another video. What I want to get to this morning is basically the government spending and the track that the government is on. And when you've got a leader like Keir Starmer who says he prefers to deal with the WEF than with Westminster, that means he's cutting out you, me. He doesn't want to deal with us. We're represented in Westminster, not the WEF. So those people who say that you're overreacting regarding the WEF, no, you're not. Because when a leader says that he's prepared to deal with the WEF more than he is with Westminster, that is because it's not cluttered up with us, the voters. He's bypassing us. He's taking no notice of the actual system that's set up for us to use when we've got grievances. I've just moved my camera so you can't see my dogs wandering about. Not very professional, is it? And as I keep reminding people, I didn't set up any social media channels to earn a living. I have a passive income, and I certainly didn't set it up to colour people's judgments. I'll obviously have my own opinion, and that will come across. It's my pages, but I'm trying my level best here to share honest information about what comes through to me because I've got good contacts. So when I'm telling you about Rachel Reeves, the reason I'm telling you is to be prepared, because there will be people watching this who are on benefits who are going to get another cut. The only upshot we've got is sometimes they leak information like this to see what public response is beforehand, and then if the response has been overwhelmingly bad, they then rescind it and decide not to use it. Again, all these plans are generally off-the-shelf items that senior civil servants have got stacked, ready to use. They're not ideas. They're not sitting around like intelligent people thinking of ideas. People are bringing them to people like Rachel Reeves, who are just the face that implements them. They're just the face you put in the stocks in olden days. Now, you know I'm always going on about the EU. Sorry to be so boring. But obviously, when I spotted it was a communist-style setup, and it was just the packaging that everyone was enjoying, like the easy travel, the EX card, pet passport, all the rigmarole, and student exchange, all the rest of it, easy working, you know. Free movement of cheap labour keeps British wages down. Did you know that? People that cracked on about this, the owner of Marks and Spencer's, Sainsbury's, they all liked it. Why? Well, it keeps wages down. But this is quite refreshing. I think it's originated on TikTok. I'm not quite sure who. Somebody called Stu. That's all you get. Funny names on Twitter. I think this just sums up Ursula von der Leyen. Actually, I've pulled my hair into a fringe this morning because it were all going back when I got up, and David said, "Hey Ursula, do you want a brew?" I went, "Ursula?" He went, "Yeah, you look like that bird that runs EU." It's not a look I actually had in mind, actually, because I find her one of the most distasteful people I ever knew. Anyway, here it is. Bearing in mind what's going on in Europe right now, listen to what he says about Ursula. It's only his opinion, but strikes a chord with me. Are you ready? I'll show you, and then you can see what he looks like. You know, it's all right. It's not a nutter.
Here's one for you. The EU is the world's biggest scam, and its leaders are nothing but flunky politicians running cover for each other. You ever notice how scandal-ridden politicians never actually fall? Instead of getting fired, persecuted, or held accountable, they magically land cushy jobs in the EU. Take Ursula von der Leyen. She was Germany's Minister of Defense, a total disaster. Her ministry handed out millions in shady contracts to friends and ex-colleagues in a scandal so bad it should have ended her career. Fraud, mismanagement, backroom deals, the works. And what happened? She got promoted. Not fired, not investigated, promoted to President of the European Commission, one of the most powerful positions in Europe. That's the EU's real purpose, protecting its own. This is why the EU is a joke. It's a dumping ground for politicians who should be in court, not in power. They don't answer to voters, they answer to each other. And now, this same fraud is pushing Europe into war. You think someone who was pulling dirty defense contracts in Germany suddenly got honest in Brussels? If she was handing out shady deals then, what the hell do you think she's doing now? This is why Hungary, Slovakia, and others aren't playing along. They see through the scam. They're not about to send their soldiers to die for von der Leyen's career, for Brussels' power grab, or for the war machine cashing in on billions. This isn't just another corruption scandal. This isn't about stolen tax money. This is about setting up Europeans to kill and die in a war they didn't sign up for. And who benefits? Not the average European struggling with inflation, not the people crushed by energy prices, not the Ukrainians thrown into the grinder. The only winners are the unelected frauds in Brussels and the war profiteers counting their money. It's a total scam. It's always been a scam, and the longer people refuse to see it, the more lives will be destroyed.
Now, I think he's summed that up pretty well. Bearing in mind, Ursula von der Leyen, she's one of the presidents of the EU. She's very well off, you know. She's very rich. Husband has many things invested in pharmaceuticals, and recently they made a lot of money. Anyway, sorry, I can't help going into accents when I'm doing people. She's recently announced, coinciding with a couple of weeks ago when the other convicted felon, Christine Lagarde, that spends about 2,000 quid on a scarf, she announced that they're ready in Europe. She speaks a bit like, something like that. They're ready in Europe to have a digital euro. Digital euro, that'll be quantitative eased as well, won't it? So put that in the bag. Then think what he's just said about the German defence contract. She decimated German defence, did Ursula von der Leyen, but they move her out like they're on little wheels. Oh, it's no good down to you. We have to move you now. Go to the EU. So now she's the president. She's in Jean-Claude Juncker. Do you remember him? They once couldn't get him off that plane, at Strasbourg because he was too drunk. They had to sit up tarmac for an hour while he slept it off. A stewardess sent me a picture of him. So now what's happened? Ursula has come up with a wonderful idea for savers in the EU. And the reason you have to watch this, you have to watch what's going on because our glorious leader is closely aligned. He's getting us as close as you can. You won't get rice paper between us with the EU and what the EU is doing. So this is why you need to pay attention to this. So Ursula's come up with this wonderful idea for savers with money in the bank account. Yes, you've been savvy enough to have some savings. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take it from you and tell you you're going to make a lot of money when we start using your money. Because obviously, why would we need to use your money? Because we spent all the taxes. It's all gone. So now what they're going to do, they're going to give savers a real good return on their money by having access to their bank accounts. You're going to get in the bank accounts. Basically, it's not a choice thing. You're not going to say, oh, actually, Ursula, no, I'm not going to join in with this scheme. No, not a chance. They're going to have it anyway. Do you trust them with it? They've lost all taxes. They've spent like lottery winners. And now they're going to decide to, they're sugarcoating it by telling you you'll get a good return on your money. But you won't get access to the lump sum. So who's got the lump sum then that's going to earn the interest on the money while they go spending it on things that you need when you're on a war footing? So can you see how it goes out of the tax system? Now it's going to go out of savers' accounts and go into the military industrial complex, which is all made in the West. And then, extraordinarily, you find that so many politicians through shell companies have interests in arms manufacturers. Ooh, tumbleweed rolls through the mind. So this is why you have to keep an eye on what's going on in Europe, because our glorious leader is following it so closely. So I'm sitting here waiting, hoping that it doesn't happen to you and your savings. And it's no good taking it out and stashing it under the bed, because you only have to look what happened to the Weimar people in Germany. They had literally a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy a loaf almost. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. So we've got to keep an eye on these comedians because they're on a spending spree. I don't care what they say in this government about what's going on. This government is on a spending spree. And if you want to know what inflation's like, you do not need to listen to economists. All you need to do is look at that receipt when you're at the checkout and ask why a similar basket of shopping was costing 80% less 12 months ago. That's your economy. That's what it means. It's all right, and this is why I get annoyed with some well-heeled commentators that are always talking about the GDP and how Great Britain's doing. That's all right when you sat in the gherkin in your advisory capacity on 200,000 a year salary or sat as a journalist. But I talk to real people. I talk to people who are struggling to pay the rent. I talk to people whose mortgage has gone up. Will they have to sell the house? People who are now getting a second job just to make ends meet. The reason the birth rate has dropped isn't because we don't want to breed. It's because we can't afford to have the leisure time to actually copulate, because two people are coming in and out of the house at different times. And the last thing they want on their agenda is another child because of costings. And that's because our society generally is a society where we are generations into being brought up to stand on our own 2 feet. Our mothers and fathers gave us that indoctrination. You stand on your own 2 feet. Do you remember when you were a kid and debt was shameful? People who had debt were shamed just because they were buying a washing machine. So we've now gone the whole hog. People are showing off about what they owe on their credit cards. Young people have loans of £12,000 and £15,000, 17-year-olds. Students show off about the student debt, and yet the students that go on scholarships or the ones that come from working class families that have had to have a job during the study time tend to do better with their student loan because they're earning the money to pay for the books and pay for the lectures, whatever the money goes on, accommodation sometimes. We've designed our society to not only accept debt but embrace debt. It's one of the reasons we've ended up a massive customer of the European Union, because we spend more than they do. We will change our lounge furniture every 5 to 6 years. And if we change a sofa, we change the carpets or the click-clack. We change the whole decor. In Europe, in Austria and Germany, they buy something to last. A suite will last someone their married life. They do it with clothing. I remember my neighbour said he needed a new coat, and it was a typical Austrian jacket, like Von Trapp would wear. And I said, oh, it's rather smart, that horse. Why are you getting a new coat? I said it in German. And he said, because it's ready for going now. It's 15 years old. 15 years old. So, we buy our clothes and chuck them away. We go to TK Maxx. We're disposable. We have a disposable society. So you watch this Rachel Reeves when she comes out with this kind of whatever she's coming out with. It's just bollocks to me. But you need to keep an eye on what is happening with your own government, and always keep an eye on what's going on with the EU, because we're trying to mirror image it. No matter what anybody says, that's what he's trying to do. He can't hold a referendum to get us back in, because I think he knows it would fail. But the good thing is, even the cultural Marxists are falling foul of Keir Starmer. Now that is a day to remember, when the likes of Owen Jones and The Guardian are criticising the government, and that him that's called Stefanovic, I can never remember his name, it's long and foreign sounding. I mean, he's normally crawling up Labour's backside, but here he is slagging them off. All the big names, Yasmin, I'm a moaning bitch Brown, she's at it. When you're losing support like that, you're losing. So he might be in with a big majority because nobody bothered to vote. Apathy got him in. Not Labour voters. Labour voters didn't turn out enough. Just a proportion that like him. You've got to remember, you have 7 million people in London. And did he get, 10 million votes? 6 to 7 million people? That means 57 million didn't vote for him. Some wouldn't be able to. They'd be underage. But you know what I'm saying. So always keep an eye on what's going on in Europe. Never take your eye off the ball with that set of comedians, because this is a Soviet-style setup. This is where states lose their identity, where people, they don't want you to have an allegiance to a country. And the biggest thing they're frightened of is an allegiance to your family. And that's why it's been encouraged through the pop industry. Spice Girls started it, first time we started seeing pregnant women in clingy clothes, famous people pregnant before marriage. This has all been drip fed into us since the 60s, so that we get used to one-parent households where there's no breadwinner, no male influence. It's just a single mum who it automatically turns to the state for survival, for her benefits. And then the state has a say in how you run your home, what you're spending your money on, etc. So it's now become the norm to have 2, 3 children, different fathers, no male influence, no father figure, and then break it down even further with sexuality, where basically the rights for gay people have now been manipulated whilst they've been attained, which is good. I think any 2 people buying a house together, whatever the relationship is, should have the same rights as a married couple, because you're investing something together. That's just normal to me. But it's gone that further and further and further, because Marxism nurtures minority setups, because it's the only way that they can get people to follow what they're doing. If you Google cultural Marxism and its ethos, you'll see what's happening in society. You'll see it all marry up. But sadly, they don't like it. Even the well-heeled Marxists, the ones that work for the BBC and the ones that commentate, they're not enjoying it. Now it's actually being rolled out on them. It's a pipe dream. It sounds good when you're reading about it. But as you know, when someone can spend £7,000 for a day's biscuits, David Lammy, and you've got a Speaker of the House with £51,000 on a portrait, when £15,000 is for a frame, and £7 million to do up John Berco's apartments. Do you honestly think John Bercow would have left it in such a mess? I mean, even if he'd peed all over the furniture and graffitied the walls, what the hell could he have done with it to spend £7 million on it? £7 million. He got pulled over the coals, did Bercow, when he was in there, for spending 45,000 quid. And now we have a Speaker of the House who spent 7 million and no questions asked. So keep an eye on these that dish out the budget, because it's not really anything they seem to take notice of themselves.